Arch Advocate Show. Happy Friday to you, everybody. No intro music today. Gonna do a couple things. Gonna read your devotional to you. Gonna read a listener email, and then we're going to get deep. All right. So here we go. This is Jesus Calling, a devotional by Sarah Young. January 11th. Trust me by relinquishing control into my hands. Let go and recognize that I am God. This is my world. I made it and I control it. Yours is a responsive part in the litany of love. I search among my children for receptivity to me. Guard well this gift I have planted in your heart. Nurture it with with the light of my presence. Nurture it with the light of my presence. When you bring me prayer requests, lay out your concerns before me. Speak to me candidly. Pour out your heart. Then thank me for the answers that I have set into motion long before you can discern results. When your request comes to mind again, continue to thank me for the answers that are on the way. If you keep on stating your concerns to me, you will live in that state of tension. And when you thank me for how I am answering your prayers, your mindset becomes much more positive. Thankful prayers keep your focus on my presence and my promises. Yeah, that's good on prayer, and that's what we're talking about today. Probably the prayer series is probably going to go on for a while. That's good. I like that. Listener Troy had written in, and it's kind of fun. I'm going to read this to you, and then I'll give you a little bit of a breakdown here. He says, "Hey, bud. Hey, bud. I want you to know that I listen to all your podcasts while I'm at work, and you have affected my life in a very positive way. I totally relate to the things that you say and use your podcast to help me grow my faith and in my walk with the Father. I have to say the episode where you talked about your dad dying hit me hard, and I have listened to it 5 times now. I had my 8 and 10-year-old son listen to it as well. I've had many jobs, and being a father is definitely the hardest. I didn't have a good relationship with my father until I was 27. I'm now 33. My parents are married, but my dad worked 6 to 7 days a week while I was growing up. And when he wasn't home, he didn't spend much time teaching me what it meant to be a man. I know he didn't have good guidance from his father growing up, so I try not to fault him. Your word on the good man fallacy moved me and helped me out to put to bed some of the resentment I have. I'm very fortunate to have an uncle that is a man of God to help teach me about God and what it is to be a good father. I definitely, fall short daily, and I struggle with that. At the time you posted that episode, I was really down about how I wasn't being a good dad or husband for that matter. You gave me the wisdom and strength to pick myself up and start putting the pieces back together. I've been meaning to write to you for a while now and felt compelled to do so today. When you mentioned that you might have to shut the podcast down in June. And let me just address that really quick. I didn't mean that. I meant I might have to shut the website down just because it's, I'm going to have to start paying for it again. Like when I started that website, I bought a 3-year block because I had the money. And no, the podcast itself is it's still going. Just if anybody else misunderstood that, and it's March, by the way. The podcast isn't shutting down in June, but yeah, thank you. It says, as I get my finances in order, I will be sending in money. Okay, well, thank you. But, just listen, if you don't have it, you don't have it. It's cool, God provides for me, no matter what. No matter what happens, God will provide his will. If his will is like, well, Pete, you don't really need a website, then I guess I don't need a website, Anyways, Yeah, I just don't want you guys, like, I always put in your, like, if you want to support the show, go to archavocate.com or just go straight to paypalme.com/archavocate. But look, if you do, great. And if you don't, that's great too. Whatever. I don't want people to, put themselves in a bad spot. But thank you for having your mind in that place. So I'll be sending in some money. Please don't shut the show down. I need it, and I know many others do as well. I hope you know you might not be famous right now, but God has you on a path that is helping and saving people. Keep up the good work, and know that we appreciate you, Troy. And I tell you guys, man, that really, I really appreciate that. And I wrote Troy back. I said, Troy, let me remind you that we have a very strict do not make the podcast host cry policy, and you just broke it, sir. Like that really, because here's the thing, like I'm just sitting here in this room talking, you know what I mean? And I've had a number of experiences in life, and I think that I can speak to a certain amount of things with a certain amount of authority, and so I do. But I'm in the Albanian Alps, you know what I mean? There's just a handful of people in this village that I'm in that even speak English. I don't talk to a lot of people, and sometimes I forget that people are actually listening. You know what I mean? And Troy writes in, and that just blows me away. Like I didn't know that. And the fact that he's got his kids, he had his kids listen to it. Like sometimes I forget that people listen, and that words have weight, and that that the slightest thing can affect people in profound ways. So thank you for that, Troy. Thank you for the reminder. And that really moved me. And then right before Christmas, this lady Erica sent me some money. She didn't even write in. She just sent me some money. And I think followed me on Twitter. And she wrote a message on the PayPal, and she's like, "Hey, I've been listening for like a year." And I was like, sometimes I forget, like there's people that listen, they've never contacted me. But they're listeners, you know what I mean? Like there's people listening, and I've never met them, and it like that whole concept like blows me away sometimes. It's funny and awesome. Like awesome and funny first. So Troy, thank you for that. Now, on to the show. You guys remember what was the opening of the Muppet Show? I wish that was my opening. Belief. We're going to be talking about prayer, but we're going to talk about belief in just a quick second. Like belief, what is it? There's that word has morphed into something that is more akin to accepting. Right? You tell me that the world is round, and you show me pictures, and you tell me that many men have circumnavigated the globe on ships, and I say, okay, I believe that the world is round. I believe that the earth is a sphere, right? But that's not what belief is. That's accepting it. Belief would be to become a captain of a ship and drive that ship across the ocean either in an eastward or westward direction and keep going until you arrive at your point of departure. Right? That would be belief. If you believe that the earth is round, another way that you could do it to show belief would be to become an astronaut and go into space and look at it. That would be belief. So I do not believe that the earth is a sphere. I accept that the earth is a sphere. And I'm never going to believe it because I'm never going to become a sea captain, and I'm never going to become an astronaut, or I'm never going to endeavor to hold an occupation that would require me to place my life into the fact that the earth is a sphere. Because that's what believe means, right? Like the way language works, for the most part, is syllables tell you how many actual words are in the word that you're saying, right? Like sarcasm, right? To be sarcastic, sarcasm. It's 2 syllables, it's 2 words, right? Chasm means like a hole or a tear, right? In the Greek or Latin, whichever one, I think sarcasm is Greek. And if it is, like in the Greek, chasm is like, if you're out in the wilderness and you come to a cave in the ground, that's a chasm. And sar means to create, to cut, create by cutting. And sarcasm is actually a medical term. Sarcasm, like when you cut into, when a surgeon cuts into a human body, that is sarcasm. Creating a chasm, cutting into the flesh. Sarcasm. So you think sarcasm means like to be snarky? Well, I guess it does mean that, or to be like insultingly snarky or whatever. But it doesn't actually mean that. Sarcasm means to actually tear the flesh. And you'll know that because when you use sarcasm with your friends or whatever, it's usually because you're breaking stones with your friends. See, now I got to clean up my mouth, Troy, because you told me your kids are listening. No, I really can't cuss. Thanks a lot, buddy. No, thank you, Troy. Seriously, I need to quit cussing. Sarcasm, it's 2 words, sarcasm. But you never really thought of it that way because it's just 1 word, sarcasm. Right? Well, belief is the same way. Believe. It's actually 2 words. What's the second word, right? After be. Believe, become. Any word. You know what I mean? There's so many words that start off with be. And that's what it means, being. Right? And leaf. What does that mean? Life. Right? Old, like Germanic derivation. Believe means to place your life into it. To have your whole life in that state of being. Do you understand that? That's what belief is. That's what it means to believe. It means your life is in that state of being. And so that's what I mean. Like if you talk about the earth is round, the earth is a sphere. Yes, I accept that. I acknowledge that. I do not argue against that, right? I trust that that is true. But if I were to believe that, it would require a great deal of work on my part, work that other men have done, right? Become an astronaut, become a captain, become a, aerospace engineer, whatever. That's when believe comes in. You have to place your whole life into it. Just like you would have to place your whole life into a capsule, like the early astronauts did, and then, sit on a gigantic exploding firecracker and get shot off into space. That's believe. That's believing, baby. You put your whole life into it because you believe in a great many things in that instance. Same thing with being a sea captain. It's like, oh, I believe the earth is round. Watch this. I'm gonna depart from, what's the Cape there in South Africa? Cape of whatever, right? At the very Horn of Africa. It's like, I'm going to depart there, and I'm going to travel west, and when I'm done, I'm going to arrive at the Cape of whatever, there in South Africa. Well, what if you fall off the, planet? Well, I'm putting my whole life into it. I don't believe that there's an edge of the planet. And I'm gonna put my whole being into this life. Believe. Believe. By my actions, you know that I believe that there is no edge of the earth, and I'm just going to keep going until I arrive here. That's belief. And belief is very important if you're going to walk with the Lord. And it's important to know what that word means. As you walk around and say, oh, are you a believer? Are you a believer? No, I'm a believer. Dude, that's not what belief is. Some guy stands up on a stage and says, Jesus Christ is God. And God made himself into a human being. The Word of God was made flesh and walked amongst us. He humiliated himself by becoming one of us, walked around with us, and was poor. Not very well liked. Very well respected, not very well liked. Most people were not digging what he was shoveling. Right? Bible says he wasn't even particularly good looking. And then he allowed himself to be tortured to death by us, by his own creation. Tortured to death. In a final act, right? A final statement by God to say, look, this is how far I will go for you. I will pardon all of your sin. All the things that keep you separated from me, I will pardon it all. I want this relationship with you so bad. It's the whole point. Like the reason I spoke the universe into existence, which by the way, required a great deal of energy. Took a lot of work, people. It's a grand design and it's beautiful, and I made it just for you, so that you and I could walk and talk in the evening. Not just in the evening, but like that's how it was with Adam. Some guy stands up on stage and says that to you. Says, hey man, do you believe Jesus Christ? And you say, oh, okay. Well, all these other people seem to also trust you that what you're saying is factually correct. Well, come up here and say these magic words. And then you won't have to go to hell when you die. And then you'll be a believer. And that person walks away saying, oh, I'm a believer. It's like, that's not what believe means. You didn't place your whole life into anything. You just said some words. You had an emotional experience. A very moving tale was told to you. You felt all emotional. And you went up and you rattled off some words, and now you're no different than when you walked in here. Right? Because the preacher and those people that are there to help you at the altar call or whatever, that they didn't explain to you there's actually a meaning behind the word believe. And this walk with Christ thing, this whole thing about, this whole weird thing in Christianity, which, by the way, is a very, very recent development in the arc of Christian history, is this whole idea of, accepting Jesus into your heart as your Lord and Savior. It's I don't find that anywhere. I don't find that anywhere. What I do find is Jesus Christ himself saying, if you want to find life, lose the one you have. Right? Ditch it. Get rid of it. You want to know what the new life is about? Just eject the one you've got. And then you will find it. I find Jesus Christ, the Word of God made flesh, saying horrific things. There is a path that leads to life. I'm here to deliver it to you. There is a path that leads to life. But few will find it, and wide is the road. It's a super highway. It's Interstate 10, baby. It's an open road, and it's big enough for everybody. That's the way that leads to destruction. Belief, right? And if you're going to if you're going to approach God in prayer, you better, you know what I mean, you better have some sort of some sort of beginning of concept of what you're doing, who you're speaking to, and the stones that it takes to believe that this mighty God, who is currently right now operating the known universe, keeping it running, keeping stars in a constant state of explosion, keeping planets in a constant state of spinning and in orbit, keeping the sunlight continually causing new seeds to sprout the food that we eat, you know what I mean? And clean the air that we breathe, like all, like everything that goes into just maintaining that God that's operating all that stuff. You have to have some sort of beginning where it's like, oh, that God will hear me when I speak. As if, and I could, if I wanted to, like, if I had the time, I could qualify this, but as if you were the only person on earth. That's how focused, laser focused, God Almighty's attention is on you. It's as if he's got nothing else to do and no one else to talk to. It's that focused all the time. And you have to believe that. You have to place your life in that. Place your being in that. And I'm going to tell you a story now about exactly that. You know, King David, look, I talk a lot of garbage about King David because he did a lot of bad things, but, because it needs to be said, right? Like, you have to understand, like, you're not going to be perfect. Well, let me strike that. Everybody's got their thing. You know what I mean? Everybody has their things that they have to deal with. And if you read through the books of, Samuel and Chronicles and Kings, and you read through the history of King David, you'll see, man, like the reason why God said, now this guy gets it, this guy's got it all figured out. Or to give the actual quote, this man has a heart after me. His heart chases after me. This guy, David. And the reason why, it wasn't because David ran a perfect life, clean living and whatever. No. It's because David brought all of his garbage to God. It's written. He talks about it. He walks the reader, right? Like, yeah, man, like, this is, I came before the Lord and I poured it all out. God, it's amazing. And David had a remarkable prayer life, and nobody's ever talked about, I've never heard anybody talk about this, but it's probably because when he was a kid, he tended to his father Jesse's sheep. He was a shepherd. And as a little boy, he was out in the woods, all by himself, fighting bears, as it describes, and lions, as a little kid. And he was out there practicing the sling all the time and whatever. And while he was out there, he developed, a mastery of music to a certain level. Like, he got into music and playing music and writing music. But he had a very unique prayer life. And it developed all on its own. His prayer life was uniquely his. Nobody taught him how to pray. He was just out there in the woods with nothing to do. And that's what he figured out. And it was very, very important to him. He understood that God was with him because all of these things that happened. Like, it says he was either a bear or a lion or both, but he killed a bear with his hands by reaching into its throat and choking it. right? Because the bear had, if you reach into an animal's throat, if you can get that, if you can get it done, like they'll choke to death. And that's how he killed that animal, and that's how he killed that lion when he was a kid. And then he goes out and slays the giant, Goliath. And not only that, but he didn't just go out there to kill him. Goliath had 4 brothers. He went out there to slay a family of giants, of Philistines. So he had a remarkable prayer life, and he was dependent on that. And it was so developed that, like, that whole book of Psalms, you know what I mean? That's how profound his prayer life was. It was vital to him. As screwed up of a guy as he was, right? He committed adultery and murder, and that involves coveting and whatever, and it kind of looks like David sort of had a bloodlust, which would be understandable if you looked at it. Like, one day he's like a preteen, 12, 13, maybe 14 years old. He goes out and he kills this giant in front of his whole tribe, and they all cheer for him. You have any idea what that would do to your psyche? It's like, oh, killing people, this is good. And then you go through like the stories of King David, like in the books where the actual stories are. And there's places where it kind of looks like King David went and fought and killed all, these other armies just out of nothing but bloodlust. Like God didn't tell him to go do that. And it kind of looks like King David had a bit of that. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's who knows. But on the other hand, like, he knew he was flawed, and he would take his flaws to the Lord and talk about it and let God work on him, and he would sob and cry, and God would work with him and whatever. And it's really amazing. So this story, I'm going to tell you, you're probably never going to hear anybody ever share this with you, but if you want to read it, it's in 2 Samuel chapter 23. And it says, "And the Philistines were gathered together in a troop, where there was a piece of ground full of lentils." So that's food. Let me just read this, and then I'll explain it. "And then the people fled from the Philistines. But he, David, stood in the midst of the ground and defended it, and slew the Philistines, and the Lord brought about a great victory. And 3 of the 30 chief went down and came to David in the harvest time unto the cave of Adullam. And the troop of the Philistines pitched in the valley of Rephaim. And David was in a hold, or in a pickle. And the garrison of the Philistines was then in Bethlehem. And David longed and said, Oh, that one would give me a drink of water from the well of Bethlehem, which is by the gate." And that well he was referring to was his father's. "And the 3 mighty men broke through the Philistine army, and they went to Bethlehem. They got the water out of the well, and they ran back through the camp of the Philistines." They were very sneaky. "And brought it to King David. And King David said, and they brought it to King David. Nevertheless, he wouldn't drink it, but instead he poured it out on the ground to the Lord. And he said, Be it far from me. These men, they just risked their lives to bring me this water. There's no way I can drink this." Right? It really humbled him. Let me give you the sermon that nobody's ever told you before, or maybe they have. So the Philistines were running around ransacking a whole bunch of villages, right? Taking everybody's stuff. And they came to this one, like, field of land that was on like on the top of a valley, right? Like if you go to the Grand Canyon, you're on top of it and you're looking down. But if you look, to your right, to the left, or behind you, it's just all flat land. It's like pretty, farmland. It's flat. It's easy to till. And this is where the Philistines had taken over. And so, it says the Philistines gathered together at this place where there were lentils. So that's just free food that's growing out of the ground. And they were like, okay, this is good. And there were other people that had figured out that there was food growing there, and they drove those people out. But David stood in the middle of them, and he killed all those Philistines, right? So, there's a great victory, and then the Philistines, came. David had gotten himself into a position where he and his men were in this valley, and the Philistines were in large numbers, and they were on top of the rim of this valley, right? And David was in this cave with his men, and him and his men were probably trying to figure out, like, okay, how are we going to go about this battle? Let's go up and kill those people, whatever, and maybe we should just hang out and wait till they go away, and then we can go get our other men or whatever. And while they're all hanging out and talking about stuff, David just kind of mutters out, like, "Oh man, this water that we have, it's old. All the oxygen's out of it. It's flat. It doesn't taste good. You know what? I would kill for two things: carne asada burrito, guacamole, sour cream, cheese, and a drink of water from my father's well." I'm telling you guys, it's sweet water. Not this bitter stuff that we're drinking. This water is primo. It's just kidding about the carne asada burrito. He didn't say that. It says, and 3 of the 30 went down, came to David in the harvest time into the cave. So, right, we know that this was a different time than the previous time when he just slayed the Philistines, because they say, well, now it's harvest time. So this is in the fall, right? Late summer, fall, whatever. And David was in this cave, and the troop of the Philistines pitched in the valley of Rephaim, right? They were on top of the valley. King David was in a cave. That's all we're told, right? Well, I mean, that's all I'm going to read to you. But that's all we're told of the conversation that went on in that cave. Is that David was cornered, because it says he was in a hold. That means he was painted into a corner. He was in check. All right? He was in check with his men in a cave, probably trying to strategize and figure out how they were going to go about the battle. And he blurts out, just kind of under his breath, or just kind of nonchalantly, like, "Dude, I would kill for a drink of water from my dad's well." And King David's men, remember, and at another point in 2019, I'll probably get to this, but King David's army was comprised of criminals, outcasts, men who had been rejected by their society. And King David comes along, he's like, "Oh, you guys are with me now. Remember me? I'm David. I'm the giant killer. That's me. Like, all you guys, you're all with me now. All you criminals, you thieves, you people who've been accused of murder, accused of this, whatever, you're with me now. You're my army." And those men loved their general. They loved David. They would die for that guy. And so when King David says out loud, like, "I want some water from my dad's well," his 3 buddies who were close to him were like, "Let's go. Dude, that's our dude. That's my dude right there. My boy wants a drink. Baby's gonna drink. Let's go." Hey, wait a minute, but we'd have to cut through the actual camp. We'd have to actually go through the camp, through the tents, past the fires, through the horses, through the camp of the Philistines. Baby needs a drink. Let's go. Gotta go. And those 3 men did that. They snuck through, right? But here's the thing. This is the part that, and then they snuck back. But this is the part that you've probably never heard before, right? Remember, King David had a prayer life that was very well developed. It was just a part of him. And it is clear, very clear in scriptures that cool of the day, as it said in the first couple of chapters of Genesis. Remember, God would come down and talk with Adam in the, quote, cool of the day. King David talks about that too. He's like, listen, I pray in the morning, I pray whatever, I pray here, I pray there, but like there's also like when the sun is going down and it's hot outside. And remember, it says this was harvest time, so it would have been hot. When the sun's going down and the air is just that perfect temperature and the light, the sunlight isn't as violent on my skin and on my eyes. It's that sweet spot where it's still very bright outside, but the sun isn't on you. And the fauna is starting to release its nighttime smells, right? That's when I go for a walk. And I do it every day. This is my time. At the end of the day, before the sun goes all the way down, I go for a walk and I talk with my God. That's just what I do. This is part of my life. The reason why I was able to kill that bear and kill that lion with my bare hands, and by the way, for people who don't believe that that's possible, that still happens to this day. The Maasai tribe in Africa, it's, some of those little offshoot tribes, that's still a rite of passage to manhood. You have to go out and kill a lion with your bare hands. It happens all the time. It's not one of those crazy miracles. It's like, no, it's actually, there's people who figured out how to do it. Anyways, the reason I was able to kill that bear, the reason I was able to kill that lion, the reason I was able to kill that giant is because I talk with my God. That's why. He's always with me. And I don't ever want to not be with him because his presence is safety. I was safe from that bear because I was in prayer. I'm always praying. I'm always talking with my God. And now I'm in this cave, stuck in this valley, and the Philistine army is on the rim of this valley. And as the sun is beginning to go down, the shadow of their encampment was, drawing down on that valley. So David would have had a choice to make. Do I preserve my life and stay in this cave and not go out and pray in the cool of the day? Do I stay in this cave and die a spiritual death? Or do I go outside and die a physical death? Because the Philistines are going to see me, probably. And guess what he said? Yeah. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'm going for a walk. You give me the choice between a spiritual death or a mortal coil death. Oh, this isn't even a contest. This is easy. This is child's play. I'm going for a walk. There's no way. I am way safer talking with my God outside in front of the Philistines than I am in here not talking to my God. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. That's, in my opinion, where King David got the idea to write that particular psalm. Because the circumstances, you look at the circumstances, that's probably where he probably went home and he was like, oh man, if I got a story for you guys, check that, I've got a song to write. Yeah, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil. That's belief. That's what it means to pray and believe. To place your life in it. Belief. And prayer. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. It was a literal valley. It was a literal shadow. And it was literal death. Philistines had him outnumbered. If they saw him or his men, that would have been it. I'm going for a walk. I'm placing my life in this. When you pray, you believe, you place your life in it. When you approach God, you must understand his attention to you is singular. This is the thing, like people, there's a lot of things that we don't understand. How can God, why would God listen to me? I'll tell you why, because you're his very favorite. You're his very favorite thing ever. How could God give you singular attention when there's 7 billion people on the planet? There's stars to operate. There's planets to operate. Ecosystems, comets, meteors, supernovas, black holes. There's other dimensions. You know what I mean? An infinite number of universes, possibly. How could it, you know what I mean? Think about this. I didn't want to go off on this, but it's like, I really, it's very important that people understand that his focus on you is singular. That God loves you not like you're the only person on the planet, but like because you are the only person on the planet, like Adam. Right? Adam, a guy who existed, I believe, is also a metaphor for how God pays attention to you, like you're the only human being on the planet. And if you think that that's too hard to believe, it's like, well, think about it like this. Like, well, what, talking about like different dimensions. And I told you guys that there was that kid. He was like, at the time, he was the youngest kid ever to get accepted into MIT. He was like, I don't know, 15 or 16 or something. But he did this talk one time, and I really need to pull it up so that people can see it. But he was saying, like, look, there's 3 dimensions that we know of, right? Height, width, and depth. And we can prove those things. And then there's a 4th dimension called time. And now we know that it exists, but we can't prove it. I can't prove time to you, but we all know. We can get our heads around it, but it can't be proven. And he says, we have strong working theories on, I think he said like 11 or 12 dimensions, right? He says, look, we're aware of like 12 dimensions, but I cannot explain to a layman like, what 8, 9, 10, and 11 are. Because trying to explain that to you would be like trying to explain a tennis ball to a man, a two-dimensional man. Do you guys remember this when I talked about this, the concept of the two-dimensional man? Like, let's just pretend there's a two-dimensional man, right? He only lives in height and width, no depth, right? And if you go meet the two-dimensional man and take a tennis ball and show it to him, all he's going to see is a circle. He's not going to see a sphere. All he's going to be able to perceive is a circle, a yellow circle. And you try to explain to him like, no, it's actually a sphere. There's space. From in the direction from you to me, there's also another dimension. He'd look at you like you're a crazy man. What are you talking about? It's just a circle. Because he's a two-dimensional man and he can't see past that. And what this kid from MIT who was trying to explain, is that as they're working on trying to prove these various dimensions, 11 or 12 of them, he's like, look, we've got working theories on it, but I can't even explain that to you. You have to be like an MIT genius guy to even dig it. I can't explain it to you. And furthermore, there is most likely an infinite number of dimensions. And we, the MIT geniuses, cannot get our heads around that. Because in that case, we are the two-dimensional man. We can't even fathom it. It's never going to be on the table for us. Because we are three-dimensional people with a caveat fourth. You want to talk about God's ability to focus in on you as if you are the only person on the planet. You have the full attention of the creator of the universe. Don't get all narcissistic with that, but this is a great honor. When you pray to God, he hears you. Unless he's ignoring you on purpose. And if that's the case, right, there's another antidote to that. But your prayers are never going to go completely unheard. There's things in the Bible that talks about hey, if you want to make God, plug his ears when you speak, there's ways to do it. I want to say it was Hosea. And Hosea was a prophet, and he was talking to the people, the synagogue, and he was like, listen, you people with your music, your repetitive music, you're just over and over and over again music, and you sing with no life, and you don't believe the things that you sing. God doesn't hear you. It says you're making God feel sick to his stomach. He's sick of listening to you. He's sick of it. Right? There are ways to make God be like, dude, could you please shut up? There's ways to do it, but even in that, God still hears you. And there's an antidote to that. It's real easy. You just go to God and say, listen, you know what? I got to be honest with you. Like when I pray, I feel like my words aren't getting any further than the ceiling. God, would you please send your Holy Spirit to carry my words to you and teach me how to pray? And raise me up like a father does a son. I'm lost here. I don't know what I'm doing, Father. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a mess. Can you please, Father? You promised. You said father-son. You said father-son relationship. Please, Father, come fix this. I don't even know how to pray. By the way, that's also in Scripture. Saying that to God, like, hey, God, I don't even know how to pray. Can you teach me? Can you take me on this fantastic journey of learning how to speak to you, learning to be in awe of who it is that is hearing my words? And place your life in that. That's belief. And it, in the case of King David, it pays dividends. There's reward for that. And the reward is, right? So let me not just in the case of King David, in my case and in your case, there are dividends. There is a reward for it. A bank account, as Jesus said. Store up your treasures in heaven. And guess what that reward is? It's God. God is the reward. Don't go listen to some profiteering prosperity gospel guy. No. Money's not the reward. Good health is not the reward. A great marriage and great kids is not the reward. A fancy car, squared away life, the respect of your peers, those are not the reward. God is. God is the reward. God is the paycheck. God is the reward. God is the bank account. The kingdom of heaven is the reward. Believe when you pray. Know that God hears you. Know that he's hearing you and paying attention to you like you're the only person on the planet. And it is a father-son relationship, and he's doing nothing but watching you, listening to you, waiting for you. Like the father in the prodigal son was standing there every day, just go out in his field and look down the road. Oh, where's my boy? Only closer. He's waiting for you. That's the prayer thing for today. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I am. I feel a lot better talking about this. And it's like, last couple of days, my prayer life has been, for me and my wife, has really been quite a bit different. Better. God bless you guys. Hey, if you want to support the show, it's archadvocate.com. Do the PayPal. I got to take down that Patreon. Sorry, I still haven't done it. PayPal. You do. It's paypal.me/archadvocate. If you want to support the show, I would appreciate it. If not, hey, you guys have a great weekend. Please send me letters, man. I love it. Like, thanks again, Troy. Thank you, Erica, Todd. Right? Todd. I gotta write to you. Remind me of that. And Ian. God, we're praying for you. Let us know how you're doing. All you guys, listen, write in. I love it, man. It really blessed my heart. Bless your heart. No, it touched my heart. I got all misty when I read Troy's Facebook message there. Write in, please. I love it. PayPal.me/archadvocate. You guys have a great weekend, and I will talk to you on Monday. Peace.